This episode is sponsored in part by PTZOptics. Why hire a camera operator when the control is in your hands? Visit PTZOptics.com for more information. And by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster TC1. Stun your viewers, not your accountant. Visit newtek.com for more information.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Salt Talk. I'm Julia Sherwin with PTZOptics, joined by my co-host Stephen Haywood, broadcast engineer for PTZOptics, and also Jeremy Kloosterman with Resi. And today we're going to talk about the beginning prep for holiday services and the technology you need. But before we get to that, we have been getting some great questions from you guys, our viewers. We appreciate that. We do have an email address, as you can see here, salttalk@ptzoptics.com. And we'd like to just take a few minutes to answer some of our viewer questions. Robin Woods sent over a question for suggesting any suggestions she's wondering for camera communications. She says she loves the show, wondering if we could recommend the best way to set up communications between the production director and camera operators. Would only need one-way communications from the director to the camera operator, and wondering the best and easiest way to do that. So I'll turn that over to you guys.
Jeremy, do you want to give your solution first, or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my solution is probably the higher end solution, just because it's what I have the most experience with. But ClearComm is kind of the industry standard as far as camera communications. Now, obviously, ClearComm is two-way communication, but there's a lot of other great services out there. I don't use it yet, so I'm shopping for the same thing, Robin. So hopefully, we can take away some great information here. Like I said, I'm looking at good solutions for my church. We have an older ClearComm set up for the church, but it's again, buying those components can be a little bit pricey. I think I forget the exact name, but I think it's Rydell. Are you familiar with Rydell communications, Stephen, or is that something that you haven't really shopped for yet?
I've heard of them. I haven't done a lot of work with them, just kind of like you. But I kind of do things a little bit different. I do it kind of on the cheap, and I can kind of give you a little explanation of what we did. When we first did it, because this was a big problem, Robin, it was something that we had a hard time getting a hold of any of our camera operators. So what we did was, because we're all big hunters over here in eastern Ohio and western PA, we took our walkie-talkies that we use out in the woods, put a little earpiece in it, and it clips onto your shirt. And so we had somebody in the sound booth as well as the production area messaging camera 1, camera 2, and saying, hey, can you turn that, when we had actual camera operators. Then we got out of the archaic stage, and everybody has a smartphone. So what we did was we had everybody join a Skype chat, and we call them up on Skype since it's free, and then everybody's on it. That way you can roam around the room, you could be outside, it didn't matter, because you're still picking up cell signal. Because what we did was we even tied in some of our security team into that as well, so they could ask if they needed to see a certain camera, because we have a security team member that walks around with an iPad with all the cameras of the security cameras, but plus we bring the NDI feeds in for them in a different app so that they can see any of the cameras. So if there's something that's looking a little shady, they can tell us hey, can you move camera 3, even though it's not on screen right now, we can turn it to that so they can get a better vantage point. So that's kind of how we've done it, and it seems to work, especially with multiple cell phones, whether it's Android or iOS.
Yeah, and I just looked up Rydell. They do have it. It is Rydell. .net, I believe, is the website, but so it'd be similar to ClearComm. The cool part about some of those tools that do communications, Skype is a great solution. There's a couple other ones that are iOS apps that you can do, great tools, but the ability to have a call function or an alert, it can be crucial at times. I know in my previous church we had a flashing light, because a lot of times the sound guy doesn't want to have anything in his ears and listen to listen to a headset. So then we have a flashing light that goes off specifically for the sound guy. So we're like, hey, we need this microphone, or we need to make this adjustment to audio. But that having the ability to have a signal that way is good. I know with walkie-talkies, like Stephen was saying, you can do a call, especially with higher end two-way communication devices like that. You can call specific units, so that could be good. And some of those two-way radios have become so reasonably priced that I'm sure you were probably using pretty good ones, Stephen, for what you were doing, especially if you're using it for hunting. So.
Yeah, I think they were like 2 or 4 mile radius that you could use with
Yeah.
them, and I think they were like $80 for a set. But
Yep.
I wish I would have asked my buddy Chris. We used one when we did the production, Julia, for the school plays that we did, as well as the graduation, and they were a headset where we could talk into them and communicate with us, even through all the noise. Like, we could hear each other. It was like noise canceling. It was really good, but I think they're really expensive. They're close to $1,000, I think, for a set of 4. I want to say there was, but maybe we'll have to get back to you on the brand. But they were pretty decent. I wouldn't say they were the best, but they were decent.
Yep. Yeah, and there's like, if you do searches online, again, communication, like comms systems, there's so many platforms. And again, the iOS, everybody has their phone on them all the time anyways. So look up comms on iOS, and there's some great solutions out there for it. So
thank you. And thank you, Robin, for the question. We also have another question. Before I read that, I just want to mention today's show is being pre-recorded for September the 28th. The last Tuesday of the month, we come to you live at 11 a.m. Eastern time. But with some other alternative plans happening for our team this month, we are pre-recording. So you can always go back to YouTube, our YouTube channel, PTZOptics, and rewatch these live streams. So if you do miss a live stream, no worries. So we have a question from Christopher Bickley, who is another devoted listener and viewer. We appreciate that. And Christopher says he's part of a small team that is responsible for specifying and installing some support equipment for a new organ to be installed in their church this November. There will be some blind spots for parts of our choir to see our organist and choir director at the console. And I was hoping to glean some information from SaltTalk to identify the necessary equipment to set up a small video monitor in those blind spots, with a camera at the console, which could easily be patched into our existing live stream system. Of course, low latency between the camera and video monitor would be important. So my question is, how can I set up low latency camera video monitor system and also use the camera for live streaming? Did we already answer this question?
I believe, we did do it last week. We just want to make sure we get everybody's question that was sent in. So that's good. I'm glad you brought that up.
I apologize for that, but we are getting the addition of this new email address has brought in quite a number of questions. So we certainly appreciate it. Let me just check to see if there are any other ones that came in since our last show, which should be easy enough to do.
And if you guys, because this is a pre-recorded show, we encourage you, if we're going to tell you if there's a pre-recorded, if something happens, one of us have to be away, send in your questions so Julia can ask them. That's a great way for you to interact even when it's not live. So we really appreciate that.
Yep. We are getting those questions from some folks who said, they missed it, they saw our email, and of course, there's always another way to check it out. So, without any further ado, I guess I should say, we will talk about this topic that is so important. We're late September, but before we know it, it will be the holidays. Mm-hmm. And I just want to share a little personal story. Growing up Catholic, we go to church every Sunday, and since the pandemic, we've really, we haven't been there. My son's still not able to be vaccinated, but my mother was just sharing a story. She's in her late 70s. She had COVID. She had a particularly bad bout with COVID. she decided to go back to church on Sunday and said that, she just did not feel comfortable, that there wasn't a lot of safe practices as far as mask wearing and glove wearing. And she said, I did it, but I'm not going back. So this is another important thing to keep in mind for these vulnerable populations. They want to participate in worship, but maybe they're not quite ready to jump into this holiday season at any rate. Around other folks. So again, these live streams, these pre-recorded worship sessions, so critically important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that being said, how do you start beginning prep for holiday services, the tech you need? Let's start with the basics.
Jeremy, I'm sure you could attest to this. A lot of churches always wait till the last minute. A lot of houses of worship, doesn't matter.
Yep.
Wait till the last minute. 2 weeks before a play or a joint service or whatever it is, candle visual, they wait till 2 weeks before and they want to do this monster production.
Mm-hmm.
They never think about it, what they need, whether it's cameras, audio, lighting. You don't know anything about that, right?
Oh no, not at all. Actually, for real, my church, we would start, I think, 10 months ahead of time. So yeah, the last minute planning, not so much, but if you're last minute, have a good rental company on standby, and find out where you can get equipment, number one, because if you're doing a large production, most likely you're not going to buy headset mics for everybody, but miking, especially, we're living in that new age of live streaming, and so when we think in the room all the time, we're missing a lot, because when you're in an auditorium, you can acoustically hear things pretty well, no matter where you are in the auditorium. You may have to strain to hear. But now, being in a live streaming environment, as most of you will do for holiday presentations and all that, mic your room. You're going to have to mic everything, and so it might be your sound guy's worst nightmare. But figure out how to do mix buses that will just be for your live stream, where you can mix in shotgun mics for your audience. Like have audience mics all around the room, and you can get pretty inexpensive shotgun mics. This is Audio Technica shotgun mic, not very expensive at all. At my previous church, I did all Neumann shotgun mics, which those get a little bit pricey, but they sound amazing. So you can go all over the place with mics, but start to think differently. Okay, I'm streaming this. How are people going to hear? So I shared some wireless audio equipment. Stephen has some stuff to show as well. But I worked this past week at a conference and have been working a lot with Sennheiser wireless audio gear. And this new digital series that Sennheiser came out with is amazing for quickly setting up multiple units. So you can stack a full 32 channels. So you can have 32 mics stacked in a very short amount of air bandwidth with this EWD series equipment, and it's so easy to set up. You sync your microphones, your belt packs, everything with a mobile app. So you can label everybody, as you can see in that app there. You can label each mic so you know who's on what mic. You can monitor battery levels. So think a little differently with these presentations and productions of, hey, sound is going to be crucial. So that's one big area. Stephen, talk about some of that digital that microphone equipment that you were showing too.
Yeah. So as Jeremy said, having room mics. I'm glad you brought that up. But before I do that, Jeremy, what's the cost on that shotgun mic? Because I know a lot of people say, well, you say it's not that expensive, but what is it? I mean, in relation to, we say $1,000 mic is expensive, but a $200 mic isn't that expensive. But to some, that may be not the case.
Let me check here. So
Sorry to put
that's
you on the spot on that one.
no, that's okay. That's okay. Audio Technica, it was $170. So, in relative terms for a shotgun mic, that's pretty inexpensive.
Yes.
Rode makes some great inexpensive shotgun mics as well. The thing with some of the shorter range or the lower end shotgun mics though is they're shorter range, so you might have to boost them quite a bit. And then if you do happen to be running that into your main sound system, there's more opportunity for feedback issues, which, like I said, your sound guy might hate you for doing some of that. But the higher end, my church, we use the big Sennheiser, and I forget the model number all the time. But it's like the standard Sennheiser shotgun mic for video production, and we've used that in-house at times too, and that has a really long range. So
Yeah.
depending on the size of your auditorium, what you're trying to pick up, perimeter mics can be useful at times too. The perimeter mics are like those flat ones that sit on your stage, and they pick up a lot of ambient noise. So those are great things to start researching, start planning ahead. Hey, how are people gonna hear this on the live stream? And thinking differently, like I said.
Yeah. And as Jeremy said, $200 is a decent price to spend. I think if you spend anything less than that, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think if you go anything less than that, I think you're asking for trouble as far as quality, radio reception, any kind of interference. So I try to use like that $200 as your baseline for it. And everybody knows Mackie, so I'm going to pull this up here. This was one that I found. Now I too, like Jeremy, use a Sennheiser one, but the receiver that you're seeing there that plugs into the bottom of the microphone, it's right here on the right here. This part here plugs into the bottom of your microphone, and then it transmits to this pack, which would then plug into your audio mixer or whatever you're using. If you're using an audio interface, I have a Sennheiser one like this. And again, we're not promoting brands here or anything like that, but just to put it into perspective, the piece on the right with the Sennheiser is almost $900.
Yeah.
The receiver's probably close to $500. But now you're talking about the high end versus a entry level but good quality. So when we say it's low cost, that's what we're talking about. So essentially your microphone's going to look like this. And Jeremy, these are great that you can hand them off on stage to people if they're doing specific readings and you're not tripping over wires. And for $200, you could get two of these, maybe even three, depending on what your budget is, and have three great wireless mics to basically get whatever done that you're trying to get done. On stage. So audio, I think we've kind of. Julia, what do you agree? Do you think audio should be like the number one focus on this, or?
Absolutely, audio for sure, because at least you can hear the scripture, the readings. But if you don't have no audio, you have nothing. So you may though end up hearing. I was sort of curious when you talked about miking the whole room. And the ambient noise you may hear, especially I'm sensitive to this as a mom, you may hear some other things too, right? Some cries or chitter chatter and things like that. But
and that's too, don't just put mics up there to have them, but yet have a mix, have a sub mix of some sort that you're just sending out to the web feed. So for my church, I have, like I said, a separate mix bus where I'm doing my web mix completely separate. But we only have one person to do it. At my previous church, we had a whole separate audio for video room, so we had a separate mix. All of the audio channels went there, and so I would be dedicated to listening and mixing audio specifically for the web feed, where like if I had one of my crowd mics that was picking up something that shouldn't, I just quickly mute it or pull it down so it's not as prevalent in the mix. So don't just put the mics out there and leave them, because yeah, you are going to have distracting sounds with kids or coughing, or whatever it happens to be in the room. Make sure you have somebody dedicated to that.
And that's something. It's funny you say that, because we've spoken about other software solutions out there. Everybody wants, if you have an analog board, most analog boards have, gates and limiters built into them. I mean, they might not be the greatest, but they have them built in. But a lot of your software, whether it's OBS, vMix, Wirecast, they have abilities, like as Julie was saying, to kind of use a noise gate or a limiter to block that children crying or somebody coughing. You can kind of block that out.
Yeah.
So you definitely don't want to rule that out. You want to. That's a great point to bring up. You want to try to get it as quiet as you can of
Yep.
the ambience if you're using those mics.
And then the next big thing, especially if you're using equipment that you're not used to, or if you're buying equipment, test.
Yes.
Test. because you could do all this research and then put it in and find out, hey, there's a fire station just down the road, and their frequencies are completely overlapping the frequencies in my space. So test it and test again, and then test on a Sunday when the room is full, because that's what I would always do is everything would be working perfectly, and then the auditorium fills up and everybody comes in with their mobile devices, and the whole atmosphere changes as far as wireless frequencies and all that.
Yeah, people don't think about that. We always say that when they're having internet issues. I've had calls and people say, "Oh, it's great until service starts." That's because everybody's getting on your internet, and so it's great. But audio, I think the consensus across the board here, am I agreed on this, that audio should be your number one focus at this point?
For sure, audio. And then I guess the next thing you'd be looking at is adequate lighting, right? For the video side of things, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, I was just looking something up for other audio equipment, and I saw, if you it's good, it's going to be a little bit delayed, but B&H Photo quite often has great lighting specials on their deal zone, so you can pick up some great lights from B&H Photo for great prices right now. They have one available, but lighting is really key. Lighting your subjects, lighting they call it atmospheric lighting, so you have things lit up in the background, which that's what drives me crazy about my backdrop is I don't have any of that. I have a lot going on behind me, but I don't have anything lit, where Steven does a great job of lighting different elements in his set. So he's got some stuff to show you with that, and just inexpensive ways to splash some color and add a little bit of life to your production when you're doing video. It is super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to take into consideration, I think, Jeremy, you and I were discussing this kind of prior, is whatever camera that you're using and how much lighting could cause your color balance to change and things like that. So you really want to spend time looking at the lights, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Because one thing that, if you have a lot of people are shooting with like DSLRs and different camera setups now. You want to pay attention to frame rates that you're doing, and then the lights that you're using with that frame rate, because you can get a really nasty flicker with the LED lights that are coming out now. So it's good to test your camera in this situation where you're using LED lights, and make sure you're not seeing flickering or whatever kind of issues that could be introduced with frame rate and flicker issues.
Yeah, and I was telling the panel here before, I just picked up these lights for the school, and also for probably get some for the church, because we have some other colored lights. But these lights, I also have them in my studio here. These are only $28. You can see I purchased 2 times to give them a shot. But they're waterproof, which is awesome. If you put them by a baptismal, they're 15 watt. IP66. Really nice. But what I wanted to show you guys is, okay, you're like, okay, that looks really good. I saw this and I'm going, there's no way that they're splashing this on the side of the house and it's that bright. Let me tell you something. These things are super bright. I could not believe how bright these were. They show like DJs using them and them using at parties, and I was like, okay, this is kind of bait and switch type thing, right? I'm going to show you here. These are not turned up hardly at all, and you can see there's no flicker on them. These are how I have my lights set up in the studio here. I have a banner over here that I can use for like product and just something cool to kind of stick behind that's kind of more enterprise level, just with different images that I had made on the banner. But you can see it lights it up all the way down, and I have some blue light at the bottom too, so that's where it's bleeding over. But I just wanted it more or less like from about here up, but I didn't want it to blow it out. So like if I put something there, you could see, I mean, it's evenly lit, and you don't have to, and I have it shooting down on it pretty hard. But again, the brightness on it is unreal. Let me see if I can tweak this a little bit here to just change it.
It's hard to believe they're only a few inches in diameter. Yeah.
You can see I'm changing that. The brightness, just so I'll cut back. I don't know if anybody can see this, but if you look on my app, the brightness is only half of the way up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And now I'll go back to it. Now I'm going to put the brightness full. It really blows it out. Like you could see, I mean, it's bright in here, and I know the camera doesn't do it justice, but I wanted to show the PTZOptics camera that I'm using, the 20X NDI Gen 2, is not flickering at all on it. That's something and that was at full blast. I can pull it all the way down. That's just about turned off.
Yep.
And they're still bright. So like I said, I keep them about halfway. But that's a recommendation I have. I mean, for $30, my goodness, like you can't find something that good.
Well,
do you think?
Oh, go ahead, Julia.
No, I was going to say you can go ahead, Jeremy. I was just curious. Like, do you think the technology? I mean, everything's evolving so much that there are just more cost-effective solutions for things out there. And I was just going to say, if you had to choose. If you're a church, obviously churches and houses of worship are all on a budget to a certain level. But if you had to say, okay, you're going to choose one pricier piece of technology to incorporate, would you go with a better camera or would you go with a better, audio mixer? Yeah, it's a hard question.
It's tough because there's so much involved. Everybody says, well, if the audio is not good, it's harder to listen and pay attention. But then everybody with cameras, you can have a lower quality camera as long as you have better lighting. So if you have good lighting and the subject's well lit, your video will look better with any camera that you have. So you could have a low-end camera if you have good lighting. So I would say investing in some good key lights or front lights that are going to light your main subjects. If you have a podium where scripture is being read, light it there. Obviously, the best is going to be a nice even wash across the whole front of your auditorium is the best thing, but it all has to do with what does your set look like? What are you trying to light? Do you have screens in the back that you can't bleed light onto because you'll wash out your projector screens? There's a lot of things to consider there, but yeah, ultimately, audio is the first thing you want to invest in. Lighting, I would say, second. And then video, I would say, is third, because you can get away with lesser quality cameras. Think of iPhones for example, or any mobile phone. If you have a well lit subject, you can get those pictures to look good. You can have that video look good. So you can use just about anything if you have things lit well.
Yeah. No, great point. Thank you. And, if you want to kind of up the game a little bit and not have to worry about having a ton of people work on the production, then you can incorporate some cameras that do a lot of the work for you.
And that's kind of where my research came in this week. Was trying to find something for $5,000. I didn't think that was a lot to spend for a budget for like a project, right? That was kind of my, because I get asked that a lot. Like, okay, how can I get by, like, say, on $5,000? That's my budget. I already have a mixer board, but they're still using the wired, and so that was where, bringing in a couple of those wireless mics, the splash lights. You could buy a bunch of them and put them around the stage for $30. And then, obviously recommending our Simple Track 2, because it does track. It does, it gives you that ability to look really good. So you can do presets and things like that. Having it track the subject on stage, turn off the tracking, and then you can manually move the camera. So, there's a lot of options out there. And like Jeremy said, Julia, you hit the nail on the head. Lighting should really be consecutive. You can't light somebody up. It's don't matter what kind of camera you have, it's not going to look good.
Yeah.
So
how many lights do you have in your studio, Steven? Because I guarantee you have quite a few.
Yeah, I have two big ones that are color temperature, which are exactly the same. I have a key fill light off to my left that you guys can't see, that is the same temperature, because they all have temperature readouts on the back, exactly the same. And then I have 4 hair lights above me, not just for my hair, but for like my guest over there. They're like a track lighting, but they're dimmable. I have a remote for those that I use, and so it gives the ambiance that you're looking for. And I have to do it enough to where the background is darker than the foreground, because I don't want that lit up, because I have colored lighting back there.
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about with a stage too. Is a lot of times you have a projection screen in the backstage, or something that you don't want lit. So having a big wash light that just floods everything is not the best. So learning some of those lighting techniques, like Steven was saying, he has a basic 3-point lighting, a key fill, and a hair light or backlight. Some of those principles are what you need to get on YouTube, do a search, like find a tutorial how to do a basic 3-light setup, and learn how to do that good lighting, because that, again, when you're thinking video broadcast, you don't want a flat against the wall. That's why each of us have something in our background that really sets us apart from what's back there. So the same thing, especially when you're trying to do a production, like if it's a church production, you want depth, you want interactivity, and you want it to be engaging. And if you're just looking at somebody stand in front of a flat wall, it's not as engaging to your audience.
Yeah, and honestly, you also have to think about this, and he's talking about it. I'm going to kind of get up and move here for a second. But you see all these items in the back here. There's no glare off of it. And this is what you have to do. You have to play with your item like this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't want it like that. I sat there with every item that's on these shelves, everything that's positioned, and I made it so there's no glare off the projector over there. There's no glare off the box.
Those details matter.
Exactly. Those details 100% matter. So even at the church, you have shiny pulpits, you have shiny candles or communion tables with the communion trays. You got to think of that stuff. It's so important, because it could make or break your backdrop.
Yep. But at the same time, you sometimes you want a little splash of color, splash of light back there. So then you kind of think of that as, okay, what can you do to add a little bit of light in that background?
Absolutely. Julia, we solicited a church this week to see what their thought was on the 3 important things for the upcoming holiday season. Should we take a look at that? All right, let's take a roll with this. So, Chris, we're coming into the holiday season here. I know it's the end of September and everything, and everybody's going to be gearing up for the holidays and doing plays and things like that. Maybe their worship service for Christmas, those types of things. What are the top 3 things that you would suggest to either a church starting out or maybe a smaller church or, heck, even a bigger church? What's the 3 things that they should focus on?
So I would say if you're a church starting out, you're going to need the soundboard, you're going to need speakers, and I believe you're going to need presentation software of some kind. There's some free ones and there's some paid ones. And obviously you get what you pay for, but you just do what you can do.
Now, let's say they spend the money there, okay, and they want to put this out live because, we're still not through the pandemic 100%. We don't know what the future holds with it. We all looked at your awesome setup. Would you have a suggestion for how they could get their service online inexpensively?
Fairly inexpensive. So obviously, this day and age, the cheapest way to broadcast your service is an iPhone. Just turn your video on, stream Facebook Live. That is the cheapest way. Most people have an iPhone or an Android even. But an inexpensive way to do it more professionally, I guess, there's different switching programs and encoders and stuff like that are actually free. OBS is an outstanding tool for just beginning. We started out on OBS, and I still know people that swear by it. But you need some type of software. You need the computer to run that software. You need a capture card of some kind, and really a Sony Handycam or something like that, DSLR. It doesn't have to be anything real special, but if it can shoot 1080p, then you're going to have a better production than your cell phone. And then you may or may not, depending on your soundboard. If your soundboard's digital, then you can go ahead and run a digital feed right into the software, and then you have your audio, because that's the biggest concern that people have is, hey, I've got a great video shot with my iPhone, but the audio is terrible because the microphone is so small. Well, you can just run straight in with a digital board, or there's $40, $50 inexpensive audio capture cards that you can run analog out of a board that turn it into digital right into the USB.
Awesome. Great tips. If people want to know more about the church, where can they go?
Well, we are located at 246 South Mercer Street, Greenville, Pennsylvania. We're Bethel Life Worship Center, and we'd love to have you.
And what's the web address if they want to check out some of the previous services and see the quality?
You can check out online at blwc.org. You can visit us at our Facebook page, Bethel Life. Or you can go to our YouTube channel. You just simply type in Bethel Life Greenville, PA, and it brings up our Bethel Life logo. You click on it, and you can see all of our past videos.
Awesome, Chris. We'll really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Stephen. You have a really cool job, I must say.
Yeah, well, I like the company I work for, so I can't complain.
Yeah, we're not so bad, right?
No.
Well, this has been a wonderful discussion. Again, we really appreciate that you guys are taking the time out to send us your questions and your thoughts and ideas. So continue to do that at salttalk at PTZOptics.com. And we will try to, at the top of each show, answer your questions. And of course, you can rewatch shows that have previously aired on our YouTube channel. Did either of you have anything else to add for today?
No, I mean, like I mentioned the last time, testing is crucial with AV world, right? So lots of rehearsals, lots of testing. especially if you're using equipment that you're not as familiar with. Get familiar with it. Get on YouTube, find some tutorials, and really, I encourage everybody, especially thinking this way about live video streaming. Think different about your broadcasts, because people are going to be engaging completely different than what you may have done in the past. So it's a great opportunity to learn.
Yeah, I'm just going to dovetail off of Jeremy with the testing, because I can use this as an example. Our church, in preparation for the upcoming holiday season, we had a TriCaster Mini, and we've upgraded now to a TC1, and we had it sent to my house. And the reason for that is because I wanted to test it and get things set up. So when I go in, I know everything's set up. I can just plug it in, and we have to make some changes to the wiring because now it has more features. But had I not done that, I would not have seen that something happened during the process of formatting the system, or returning it back to stock, that it turned into a glorified Windows box. So I had to send it back to the company, and they had to, get New Tech to re-image it and do all that fun stuff. But had I not tested it, I could have went to the church, tore everything out of our old setup. Could have been 2 or 3 hours, only to find out when we plugged this in that now we're going to be down for a couple weeks till we send it back. It's not a big deal that we had to send it back. The fact that if you didn't test, now you've got 6 hours in the hole that you have to put everything back. So it's very, very, very important. It doesn't matter if it's lighting, anything. Test it before you go into the project and projection. So there you go, Julia.
Excellent points. Thank you both, Stephen Haywood, Jeremy Kloosterman, for another edition of Salt Talk. We'll join you again on Tuesday, October the 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much, and have a great month, everyone.